Okay. All right. Well, we got one more coming in here. Okay. I will keep adding people as they join, but we'll go ahead and get started, I think, for this evening. I want to welcome everybody. We kind of decided here a couple weeks ago to do some additional Munch on This sessions. And Kenny was one that approached me about doing one on the benefits of May-June calving. And a couple other topics came up that people were interested in. One of them was drought planning. So next Thursday, we'll have Kevin Sedovic joining us, talking about some drought planning and drought strategies. And then on April 15th, Josh and Tara Dukart will be joining us again to touch on some more holistic management, and also kind of talking about some of the tough stuff, some of the stress that people are incurring and things like that. So I welcome you to join us for those two sessions as well. These are being recorded and will be up on well, they're on the Facebook page. After this evening, they will be. And then we'll also get them added to our YouTube channel and then also on the Grazing Land Coalition website. So if you have any questions, you are more than welcome to put them in the chat. For those of you joining us on Facebook, if you want to type them in, and I will relay those questions to Kenny as we go through. And if you're having any technical difficulty, I'll try my best to help. Just type something in the chat if you can't hear something or can't see something. I'm going to mute myself once Ken gets started because there's a little bit of feedback between the two of us. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Kenny Miller. He's one of our mentors with the Grazing Lands Coalition, and I want to thank him for joining us this evening. So thanks, Kenny.
No, thanks, Trish. Yeah, I guess this evening I'm going to talk about, again, like Trish said, May and June calving. I guess I'll get my presentation up. Or I guess I could talk a little bit about past history first off, and then I'll put my presentation up. Like I said, we used to calve, the heifers usually started about the 20th of February, and the cows about the 1st of March. And it seemed like just about every year you had some kind of issues, whether it was blizzards, lots of snow, extremely cold. I mean, you could have 20, 30 below in the February, March. And then again, when things thawed, then you just had wet calving pens, calving barns, which of course led to sick calves, whether you had pneumonia, you would have scour outbreaks, coccidioses. I mean, it was a lot of medication and a lot of work. What we used to do too is in the evenings we would put in the cows that we thought were going to calve that evening into pens, because we had 3 barns that we calved in, and you'd still have to go out and check. So you're up, especially when it's bad inclement weather, you were up just about all night or every couple hours. So you started doing that after about a couple of weeks of that, you were pretty well wore out from the lack of sleep. And I guess I said we used up a lot of straw, so we had to clean a lot of pens and a lot of barns. So we had wore out lots of 5-buckle overshoes. Again, quality of life, I guess you could say it sucked. So that's how we used to do it. So now I'll pull up my presentation, and I just put a few slides together. Okay, I'll get started here. Then some of the questions we asked ourselves, why we should change to a later calving. In the later years, both Bonnie and I both worked off the ranch. So we had full-time jobs in town. So basically the ranch had to run on its own. Our plan was just to do custom grazing. And, we did that for a couple of years. And then we noticed we got into the into the wetter years, and we started getting too much litter, in our Kentucky bluegrass was kind of moving in. So and then also I was quite interested in smaller frame cows. So I thought, well, why don't we start a another herd with the smaller frame cows, and then again calve with nature, So back when we still had our cows, we had fairly large cows. We had Semitole Angus cross, and so we moved our calving from early March to again to mid-April, and we thought that would be quite a bit better, but that didn't work out the best either, because generally then you have get into these like 3-day rains. And you got a lot of baby calves on the ground's thawed out, so you're really fighting a lot of mud conditions and stuff like that. And then you still you could get those ugly blizzards in April, and so it was still a lot of labor. And plus, it seemed like when we switched calving or started changing a little bit into April, we had way more predator problems. We didn't calve right by the barns as much. We calved a little bit north of the yard, and so they were close, so we could bring them in. But then it seemed like we had coyote problems. I don't know if it was just a coincidence that coyotes are territorial. If a killer coyote moved in, and so I'm not exactly sure, but it just didn't make sense. Now that we calve in late May and June, we don't seem to have any more predator problems. So, and then when we changed, I guess I had attended Allen Savory School in Albuquerque in the mid '80s, and they said down there, so why do you calve at the worst time of the year? And they asked the question, when did the deer have their young up in North Dakota? And I guess it took me over 20 years to change, and I guess I'm a slow learner. But back then, the thought was you had to get done calving so you could get out in the field. So that was one of our excuses, I guess. And then what did the changing to this late May and June calving do to the bottom line? Well, I did some check back in some of my records. Back in 2002 to 2005, those 4 years, our vet bill was $3,390 for the year. The last 6 years, from 2015 to 2020, it averaged $474 per year. Again, we don't wean our calves till about mid to late March, and we don't give them shots anymore. We don't pour them. We don't use implants, and so that really cut our vet bill. But mainly our vet bill was from sickness, from scours and coccidiosis and all that stuff. Plus, then we used to again run the cows through, or in the spring, the calves, you'd give them all their shots and brand them, and then come fall, you would run the calves through in October before you did pre-weaning shots, and then you weaned them, and then you gave them booster shots. You run the cows through, you PG'd, you gave them shots, Vibrio, Lepto, and then come early February, we'd run the cows through again and give them scour guard shots. And so again, that's 5 times we run the cattle through the chutes, whether it was the cows or the calves. And now the only time the calves go through the chute is usually when we got land in the river bottoms. We'll move the cows out usually about first part of November, and then we run the bulls through and ban the bulls. So that's about, I guess the banning the bulls is probably our biggest vet bill now. And one thing we found out when you're calving in late May and June, normally our due date is usually around that 25th of May, and they'll start sometimes 10 days sooner. I read some article that the gestation period on cows when you're calving in the warmer weather is probably about 5 days less. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what I read. So, but again, our calves are a lot smaller, it seems like, when they're born in June. And again, when we calved in February and March, it seemed like we had quite a number of backwards calves and with or feet down, feet back. And now I never see that. Of course, I never see them calve anymore either. They calve on their own, so it's quite a rarity. Although it's not a perfect system. I mean, by calving away from the yard, uh, you still can have some issues. So I'll just go through some of the slides, kind of showing what it used to look like calving in February, March. You can see there's quite a bit of snow that year. Uh, this little critter, he doesn't think it's too happy coming into the world. Of course, we got house guests too. Then at times you'd catch them out there, and they were some that you missed at night. Were cold, so we would actually bring them in the house to warm them. And again, we use lots of straw, so which created lots of work. So then you had to clean all the pens and the barns, and of course our vet bill. I looked pretty happy there, given Cenovic shots, I guess back then, but that's a thing of the past. um, and of
Kenny, did we lose you? Hang on with us here for a second. Ken, you still there? If you are, you're muted. Kenny is still there. I'm hoping you're still there. Melissa, I see you're watching on Facebook. Can you call your dad? Ken is gone. Yeah. I think you're right. I'll have to see here. Let's see. Hang with me for just a minute here, and I will try calling him. Let's see. That's the first time we've had that happen. It says he's still on here, but I don't know if he lost internet service or what happened. Oh, there, we lost him completely. Okay, we'll give him a minute here. He'll probably try to get back on. Pete Kronberg, is that you? Robbie, I see you joined us.
Hello, Trish.
Hi, Robbie.
What happened?
Well, I don't know. I'm not sure. Oh, here comes somebody else back in. I definitely lost Kenny. So I got to see here if he's going to call me tell us a joke. Yeah, I'm not a good joke teller. Armin, you unmute yourself and you tell a joke. I don't know what happened. I tried calling his cell phone too, and he's not answering that. So I suppose he didn't have it on. I hope he knows that he's not on here anymore and he's not sitting there talking to himself. Oh boy. Yikes. Okay, hang on. Let me try calling their house number. Bear with me for just a minute here. Hi, Bonnie. Does Kenny know that he's not on there anymore? Okay, we lost him, so. Have him go back into that link again, and I'll add him. Yeah, have him go back into Zoom again. Yeah, I don't know what happened there. It just completely like cut out and it was gone. And I'm not a very good joke teller, so we'll get him back on here. And if he wants to, I mean, I don't know how many pictures he had left to show, but if he wants to, he could come back on by phone too. I can get him the phone number here too. I don't know what happened. That was just strange. It completely went blank on us. And do you want the phone number? Okay, hopefully I give you the right one here. Let's see. Dial by location. Oh boy. So which one do we take? It says San Jose, Tacoma, Houston, New York, Washington, D.C. Do you know if there's any one of those in particular that you have to take? One. Okay, well, let me go back here then. Okay, yep, there he is. Okay, we're getting him back then. Okay, good. I'll hang up then. Okay.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yep. I can hear you.
I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened.
I don't either. Nobody left,
Technology.
so that's good,
Nope.
I guess. we might have had some bad internet service, but anyway, I'll mute myself and then you just go ahead again.
I'm gonna have to pull my presentation back up again. I don't know, that disappeared for some reason.
Yep, that disappeared. Oh, here, hang on, I need to make you the co-host again.
Okay.
Okay, now you're the co-host, so you should be able to share screen again.
Okay, I'll share screen. But it, like I say, the presentation disappeared from there, so I got to go find it and pull it up again. So,
Okay.
Talk.
I guess I can just talk to. I don't know which was the last slide you saw.
Can somebody help me out? I think the last one was of you holding the Cinevex gun in your hand, maybe.
Oh, okay, okay. So, well, do you want me to pull that presentation up again and try and run it again?
Well, if you think you can get it back up, that's fine. If not, we can.
I think it'll work. I'll pull it up.
Looks like it's starting to come back up. There you go.
Yeah. Okay.
It could have been something with your internet service. I've had that happen before where it just gets poor and then.
Okay, I'll find that slide. There we go.
Yeah, go forward one more. I think this is the last one.
One more. You didn't like that one?
Hadn't seen that one yet.
Okay. Like I said, quality of life wasn't that great back then. So then I guess I said, well, why don't you, if you like the snow, take the family out and go sleigh riding. We got a lot of hills here. Or build a snowman with the grandkids. So again, you can spend time outside too in the winter. But when it come calving time, I like to see things green. This is where we're calving out in the pasture, and here it's down in the river bottoms. Again, the cows calving at this time of the year, they'll start fattening up right before calving, and shed their hair, and so they're in very good shape. And it seems like another thing that happens, our calving interval really shortened up. Normally we can have probably 75 to 80% of the cows will calve in the first 21 days. So that makes for a more uniform calf crop. And it seemed like when you calved in the later, I read an article that the gestation period is about 5 days shorter when you calve later. I don't know if that's true or not, but our calves are born smaller, and maybe it's because there's a lot less stress on the animals, and they're happy out in the pasture. So maybe that's one of the reasons why they have smaller calves. And one other thing we noticed when we calved earlier, like in that February, March time period, we had a lot of, not a lot, but we had more backwards calves and feet back or feet down. And of course, now I don't see them calve. I very seldom see a cow calving, because especially when we were both working full time, we moved the cows down to river bottoms, and I'd look at them about every third day. Sometimes it was once a week. And actually, they did better without me being around. So our calving rate actually improved by calving later. And again, you had a lot less stress and a lot less. I mean, now we don't use any. Again, like I said, we don't give them any shots to speak of. I mean, if we do have a sick animal, we'll treat it, but we're not that we're just letting them die. But so it's you have way less issues with when you calve with nature instead of fighting it. And again, just showing the calf the body condition of the cows. I mean, they're in very good shape. And again, June calving, the quality of life is pretty relaxed. Even the dogs fall asleep. Again, you can have some issues calving as far as moving calves when they're young down in the river bottoms. Those pastures are quite large. They're anywhere from 80 to 120 acres. That's large in my book. And so there we're moving about once every 5 to 10 days. So but what we do, never move, you don't want to move across any pastures. I mean, leave a pasture and go to another, so any distance. So you just move to the next pasture, just leave the gate open, come back in 2 or 3 days and close the gate behind them, and everything will be back where they're supposed to be. So it's, but you can have some difficulties too. So then it's a little issue if you're 2 miles from the yard, and this here cow, for example, she had big udder, large teats, and the excuse was she always raised a nice calf. Well, if you want to get rid of your problems and make ranching a lot easier, you've got to call harder and get rid of the problem cows. Again, we don't run the cows through the PG them in the fall, because we don't give them shots or anything anymore. So what we'll do is when it's turnout time, roughly middle of August, we'll whatever cow doesn't have a calf outside, whether she lost it or she was open, they go to market. And whether it's a young cow or older cow, or otherwise, or if it's a first calf heifer or something like that, we'll keep them. And because we do do sell some as grass finished. So we'll use them for that market too. So again, like I said, it's not a perfect world, but it definitely makes ranching a lot easier. And this was photos taken in January of 2012. We'll winter graze as long as we can, and I'll set aside or stockpile grass. If I set aside 6-8 pastures, we'll rotate through them even in the wintertime. If, for example, we figure there's 4 days or 5 days of grazing in there, we'll probably graze it 3 days, run through them, start over, and then we'll supplement with some high quality alfalfa. And again, we don't want to hurt the performance on the calves too much in the wintertime. So that's kind of how we run it in the winter. And then, of course, the winter of 2017 was pretty nasty. We got all them blizzards in December and all that snow. So there I had, we've got 6 pastures that was about 2 miles from the yard. That's where we're bale grazing. And so I'll put, so we had probably 11, 12 weeks supply of hay down there. And it pretty much got covered up. And so actually at that time, I helped a neighbor get his cows on top of the hill, a farm to the west of us, and he had his other farmstead below the hill there. So we had to move his home. We had to use a tractor and snowmobiles. So I had mine at home because we had just finished grazing cover crops. So I go and move mine 2 miles away from the yard because, of course, you couldn't get out the hay to haul it home. I couldn't even get through there with a front wheel assist tractor anymore. So I had to get a Bobcat with a snowblower, and I just blow paths from where it had the bales. One advantage, I didn't have to set up poly wires between the bales. Normally, if we put 2 weeks supply in one pasture, we'd run a poly wire across. Well, that winter with all the snow, but as soon as I come down with the Bobcat and started plowing the path to the next bales, then they'd follow. And then I just make a few circles around those bales, and but they did fine. I mean, we didn't have any big issue that winter. Again, that's about it. I usually end my presentation with soil health. It's priceless. So you can manage your grazing and improve the land. And again, by calving this May and June, it makes ranching quite simple.
Losing again?
I'm gonna pull it up again here. I don't know why. Okay.
Okay. You're
Okay, am I back?
Yeah, you're back, but you got to turn your video back on.
Oh, turn the video on. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go.
We'll open it up for questions here. If you want to unmute yourself, if you have any questions to ask. And anybody that's joining us on Facebook too, if you have any questions, go ahead and just type them in and I will share those with Ken.
Hey, Ken, how big are the pastures are that you actually drop in? And how many head do you have in them at a time?
Oh, like the ones that I showed there in the river bottom, anywhere from 100 to 120 in there. And then out in the native pastures, we used to calve out on the pivot, and those are like 7-acre paddocks. So that it gets too crowded. So then we'd give them 2 paddocks at a time, so they had a little more room.
You got any idea how many head makes it too crowded? Because we've run into too crowded before too. Yeah. I'm just curious what.
Well, that's what I said. That 7 acres with 100 head on there was then you started having some issues with if you got several of them calving at the same time, then they'll claim the wrong calf and stuff like that. So just giving them a little more space is fine. And actually, down in the river bottoms, one pasture is probably it's a lot of water and a lot of willows in there, and the cows actually walk through the water around we got fenced off, and anyway they broke out to the other side, which was a big pasture with a lot of willows, so you couldn't check them anyway. And actually they did better that way. It would be kind of funny to watch. There'd be say you had 8-10 cows that calved in one area, and in another quarter mile over there'd be another 8-10. You know, they just kind of went in groups like that, and so that was kind of interesting to watch.
Kenny, Donnie got home here from town and he was visiting with a neighbor, and he has a question that she was asking.
Have you had any problems with your steers water belly?
No, we haven't had any issue with that yet. No.
Because we were discussing it, maybe we were thinking maybe it's a salt or a mineral deficiency or something that they're running into.
Yeah, we used to never give them any salt or mineral anymore. Our water has plenty of salt in it, but the last 10-12 years we've been putting mineral out there, and this year they hardly touched it all winter, and same with the salt. I don't know, last year they ate quite a bit of that. We used that Redmond salt, so I don't know I guess unless it's different feed we're feeding this year or what. But,
I'm pretty sure usually water belly is caused by calcium phosphorus imbalance.
Yeah, and there's a phosphorus issue up here the way it is, so that could be part of it. Another question that popped up in the feed is, when and where do you market your calves?
when and where? Well, whoever will buy them. No, normally I just sell locally here at KISS, and we did sell down by Napoleon a few years. There was a guy that was looking for these all natural calves, so they paid quite a premium, but it cost us more to get them down there. And then I think the third year we took them down there, actually the same buyers that were up here bought them. So but it seems like when you sell, and normally it depends on the year, we'll either market them either in May or June, and if it's a wet year, we've got plenty of grass, we'll probably run them as yearlings and sell them in August, September. And it seems like in the spring, there's such a demand for these calves. Last year, for example, we sold them the 1st of June. The steers are right at 640, and we got a premium for them because they're not fleshy, and they're ready to go out on grass. So, and again, if you don't have, it seems like you get a premium if they don't have the shots in the spring for some reason. I guess it's not a premium in the fall when you give them shots. It's just that if you don't have shots, then you just dock the heck out of it. You know, it's just another excuse. But anyway.
I'm going to ask you a question that we've had some people ask us that I would like to hear what you have to say about it. But as far as like the vaccinations and the pour-ons, and for the number of years that you haven't used them, do you ever worry about having an outbreak of anything, not because of your own cattle, but because of neighbors' cattle?
I don't really worry about that anymore, especially down the river bottoms, because there's no cattle around them. And the ones out here, again, because we're moving so often, so they're very seldom next to the neighbor's cattle either. But when I first quit vaccinating, I was up in Canada giving some talks, and we had supper with a veterinarian, a lady, and she said, you're going to have a wreck one of these years. I said, well, if I do, then I'll change. We haven't had one yet, so I'm not worried.
I'm looking here on Facebook to see if there's any other questions that have popped up. Anybody else is welcome to unmute themselves too and ask a question.
I guess another on that topic about pour-on stuff like that, when we quit pouring, we had tremendous lice outbreaks the first year, and then the second year it was better, and the third year it was better. And now it's, you'll still have a few of them rubbing, but the neighbors that have been pouring, they said that doesn't work anymore either. So again, that's how Mother Nature works too. Back when the ear tags first came out, insecticide tags, I thought, boy, that's great. We tried them the first year, and they worked fine. The next year, they didn't work at all, because they said you took care of 95% of the flies, but the other 5% were resistant. So you just created another issue. So you got to either use different ear tags or combinations. And so like I said, we used ear tags for, I think, 1 year or 2 years, and that was about it. And I quit ear tagging too. It was, so.
Do you want to touch a little bit on turning bulls out and it being the warmer part of the summer?
Yeah, that was worried about that at first too, but it's, I guess they must do their job at night when it's cooler. But once you get into well, you can have them real hot spells in August, but what we usually turn the bulls out about mid-August, 13th, 15th, 18th, somewhere in there. So it's usually starting to cool down some too already. But again, in the river bottoms, there's a lot of wheelers, a lot of shade there. Out on the pivot, you're out in the open, but our conception rate has been actually a lot better now than what it was when we first started doing this. We had issues at first with getting first calf heifers bred, and now it's I think last year we had 2 opens on about 30 heifers, something like that, between the 2 groups. So it seems like once you get adapted to the way your management is, and it just, in the same way with our weaning weights. At first, our weaning weights were 1st of May, the first year, I think they were only like 500 pounds. And like I say, this year, the 1st of June, they were 640. So that's, we don't, I don't buy bulls anymore. We raise our own bulls. It's pretty much a closed herd. So we did, when we switched over to this, I found some smaller frame cows. Again, they're probably not as small as I would like. They're, again, in the past, our Semitole Angus were 1,500 pounds. And now these are probably around 11 to 12. So it's, so again, it takes, you can run more cattle because of course it takes less nutrition or less groceries.
Another question that came in is, how old are your calves when you band them?
How old the calves are? Well, if they're born in June, we band them in November normally. So we've done it later, and even when we were calving in that April time period, that 1 year we banded the bulls in January, or end of January, I think it was. And then when we sold them in March, the heifers were actually weighed more than the steers. It was must have been tremendous stress on them. So I think you should ban them by an earlier age. So the reason we don't in the
video again, Kenny.
oh, okay, the thing blanked out. I guess I talked too long or something. Anyway, we used to, let's see, I lost my train of thought. Oh, the reason I probably would ban them earlier, but then you got to bring them in, like say down the river bottoms. It's a hassle. You got to cross the highway and bring them home. So it's about 1.5 miles, 2 miles. So our lease normally runs till November 15th. So that's when we'll move them home, and then we ban them right after that.
Kenny.
Anybody else that has any questions, Steve?
Yeah. I might have missed the first 10 minutes, so maybe you covered this, but what was your thought process behind why you calve along the river versus on your upland acres, or the other acres?
Well, the river bottoms is all pretty much canary grass, a very cool season grass. So you got to be out down there quite early. At one time, our lease was July 15th to August 31st. Well, the canary grass would be 5-6 feet tall, and a lot of that gets flooded, so there'll be water under that. That year, then the nutrition level just drops way off, and so we had a lot of open cows back then, and they'd actually eat the willows on the sandbars. There's more nutrition in them. And the one year they actually were down there for less than a week, and they broke out and came home because there's a lot of water down there. And so they actually tore the fence down and came home. Overnight, they crossed the highway and came home. So they scolded me for leaving them down there, I guess.
What about like weather events? You know, like with lambing, you know, pasture lambing, say like a cold rain, even in May or early June, which doesn't happen very much in early June, but those are awful.
Right.
And then, you know, what was it? 2 years ago, we were pasture lambing and we had a heat wave. I mean, it got wildly hot. What are your willows kind of your buffers for those kind of things?
Yeah, the willows are very tall down there, so it's very shady. And actually, 2 summers ago when we were calving, the river bottoms flooded, so we had to move the cattle home early that time, and then when we moved the cows through, the bulls broke out, and it was like 2 weeks before we were going to turn them out. And I thought, oh, I'd let them go. Well, that spring we had, again, the river bottoms was flooded, so we couldn't put the cows down there. So we were calving out in the pasture, and then we had that early May rain and cold wind and snow for 3-4 days, and that was a disaster. We lost I think 4 calves one day and 3 the next day. I mean, they were roughly 2 miles from the yard here, and there were some draws, but there wasn't a lot of shelter. And again, so you can run into that. So that's why I will not turn the bulls out now till at least 13th, 15th of August. So then you can still have those late May storms, but it's quite rare, you know. So.
Kenny, can you repeat? You said you banded your calves in November, right?
Yes.
Okay. We had a gentleman that he caught that January was too late, but he didn't hear the month that you'd said for.
Yeah. That's when we were actually calving earlier. So that year we banded them later. I was just experimenting that time too. Before we used to always, when we worked the calves in the spring, like most people do, then we would knife cut them. And then I thought I'll try to band them instead of the implants. That was way back when. And like I say, that's what I learned when we banded them later in the year, like in January, then they would have been probably what they would have been 12, 10, 11 months old then, probably 10 months old. Yeah. Anyway, that was too much stress on them. So by now that would calve in June, so they'd be July, August, they'd be roughly 5 months old when we're banding them now. So.
How do you manage and handle? I'm assuming most of your neighbors probably are turning out before you are.
Yeah, well, with good electric fences, my cattle respect that, and the bulls respect that, you know. And then we usually have a double fence, so you got at least 6-8 feet apart from the other. And again, you just watch your rotations too, so that when they turn the bulls out, you don't have your cattle close by there, because we actually got two pastures that are 400 acres that are split into 20 paddocks. So the only time they're by the neighbors is on one side. So they're you can manage it. You just watch your rotation. And now this neighbor has actually put in a grazing system too, so his cattle don't have the whole pasture, so you can manage it that way. But we have, back in the day when both were calving at this pretty much same time, we had more bull issues then. But now it seems like again with the electric fences, that the cattle really respect it.
Any other questions? had a few people that I think got bumped off, popped back on again. But any other questions? You're sure welcome to unmute yourself or type a question into the chat. Or if there's anybody on Facebook that has any questions. So how many years have you been calving?
Well, I suppose it's been, I suppose about 12, 13 years now. See, well, like I said, we actually sold our main herd and we were just going to custom graze. So we did that for a couple of years. I brought in cattle and then I started building the herd back up again. So I think it was 2010 is when we started and we built the herd back up to, well, we've got probably 180 head now between what my daughter and son-in-law and what we have together. So.
Okay. Another question that just came in.
I still do custom grazing for the neighbor.
Oh, okay.
So that makes a challenge too because he calves in February, March. So I've got to keep those cattle, a distance away too. But normally, one herd will run in the river bottoms, and I run one group on the pivot. And that pivot will still graze some of the native pastures at times too. But then again, you can keep the cattle separated enough because we do have, I guess the total we've got over 90 paddocks. So it's, and most of our paddocks out are around about 20 acres now. The pivot, they're about 7 acres, and then we split that into thirds yet too. So then there you're moving every day. They get very high stock density.
Another question that popped up is after you wean your calves, you put them back in the same herd for the rest of the summer.
We did that at first when we didn't have as many animals, because then it was just a pain to have 50, 60 head in one pasture and 50, 60 in the other. But now that we got more, back then I would wean them for about a month and run them back with the main herd again. And it worked out, but it isn't the best when you're calving. You got the yearlings with the cows, and they seem to want to ride the calves, and they're running after them, and so it is a pain that way. But so now, if we do run the calves, the yearlings, we'll have to run them as a separate herd, and then we've got a lot of cool season pastures, fields that we seeded back to grass around the yard. So then, if we want to market them, they're right close here. If they're not in the river bottoms, then it's a pain to get them out of there. So this way, they're right here, so we can market them that way. So that's why you got to run more herds, but it does work out.
Do you want to talk a little bit about, and I know like in your operation, the infrastructure was already there, and then you made changes later on, but you want to talk about your like buildings and infrastructure that you had in place and how you talked about how you used it before, but do you really end up having to use them at all anymore?
No, actually, two of the barns, we actually got a crowding tub in the one barn, and I got machinery parked in there, and the other barn is full of machine. It jumped off again. We basically use it for storage, or what I'll do too is store hay if we got extra hay. And again, we don't put up near as much hay as we used to, so we can. We got extra hay, we will store it in the barns at times too. So really, the barn buildings aren't being used very much anymore. And we had a lot of windbreaks around the yard here while they were getting old, and we just tore everything down. So it's then we had a terrible windstorm come through 2 years ago, and it took two of the barns, smashed them, but we rebuilt them again. So it's again they're used more for machinery than anything else.
I know I listened to, we were talking about this a little bit before we started this evening, but the South Dakota Grassland Coalition has some videos that they put together and had interviewed some of the people that were affected by the Atlas blizzard, and it was interesting listening to them because the one lady was talking about, putting that 50, 60, $70,000 into a building. And I think their building had come down during the storm. And so they were having to either think about rebuilding that or putting that money back into their herd. And they ended up moving their calving dates to May, June, and just the expense of not having to put that extra infrastructure back up again.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, when I first started, we just had one barn, and then I built another barn, and I built another barn. You know, because you needed, as we're expanding the herd, and they need more room, and so I thought that was the way to go. But and then we planted a lot of trees, so we got good shelter here too. But still, then you had calf shelters for the little calves, and the wind would catch them and blow them away. And so there's always something.
Yeah. Yeah, I know like when we built our building here, the first winter, we were still calving in April, and we did have probably up to 6 or 7 pairs in the barn out here at one point in time. And now it gets used for our daughter's goats for 4-H projects. So, I mean, I don't even know the last time we had a cow in there, but
Yeah, so if you start figuring out, the bottom line, if you get rid of, the vet bill, get rid of the buildings, I mean, you can make ranching a lot more profitable and actually a lot more fun. It takes the stress away.
Kenny, have you actually sat down and figured out the difference in the amount of cost from late calving to early calving, and then the revenue side? Or can you talk about that?
Well, I mean, the way we market our cattle or calves, back, I mean, that's such a moving target too. But again, even when we switched, to that April calving, then when we backgrounded back then, at first we would push them, feed them silage and corn, and try and get them up to that 750, 800 pounds by January, February. Well, then when we went to that April, so then I just cut back. We didn't feed them any grain anymore. I just fed them silage and a little hay. And our calves were probably 600, 650 by March that time. But then when you went to the sale, these 8-weights, the 650s brought almost the same dollars per head because they were green. Where you're selling the fleshier animals, your market they really discount you. So it's again, I didn't put an exact figure. Like I said, I looked up just what the vet bills were. That was one easy one that I could look up. But again, by marketing them in May, June, it seemed like there's such a demand for these green calves, ready to go on grass. So you get a premium for them, so there's not very many on the market at the time. So that's an advantage there. So comparing, you're just marketing them at a different time, but our sale price is probably not much different than it would have been when we were sticking all that. I mean, my net profit is quite a bit higher now because we don't have all the feed into them. And again, putting up silage, that was a very expensive project. So I never ever put an exact figure on it. I used to, I guess I could go back through my records through, I was through the farm management program at BSC, and they'd break down all your enterprises. And back then, the enterprise of the background in calves, most years that never made me any money. I was losing money by doing it, but I never switched. I still did it every year. So I mean, I guess it's Norman back then, feed was so cheap too, and we could put that weight on the calves and market them, but we weren't. You were just marketing your feed basically, so it wasn't a very profitable way to do it, but that's the way we did it. So I guess I didn't give you a very good answer. Sorry.
can you talk a little bit about what you've seen happen with your replacement heifers that you've been keeping back since you have weaned later and kind of are more of that 10-month window?
Like I said, at first, when we went back with the smaller framed animals, and like I said, we had problems getting them bred, and it seemed like they just adapt more to as you longer you went. The cows adapted better, and their calves. I think they learned a lot by leaving the calf and the cow for the 10 months. They learned how to survive in the winter and learn how to graze from the mother. So I think that made it for a better replacement animal too. So, but like I said, at first it was a little disappointing. They wouldn't breed back, and now it's getting better. It was kind of ironic back when we had the big Simmental that either breed at 13 months of age when they were still out in the pasture. I mean, not 13 months, but they'd calve at 13 months. They would actually get bred at 5 and 6 months. Or either they wouldn't breed at all. It was because we'd get them too fat. I think was part of it. But anyway, it was. So we'd have several years we had calves that calved at 13 months of age. So I mean that's where these Angus don't seem to mature as quick, but still so anyway but I'm well satisfied now with the breed, getting them bred. I've talked to other producers too that said it was tough getting those first calf heifers bred. So
Another question that came in is, do you bangs vaccinate your replacement heifers?
I haven't. I quit all vaccinations. I mean, it's an issue if I want to sell out of state, then you got to be bangs vaccinated. But like I said, I've never had an issue, and if things do change, well, then I'll just have to change with it. But it's not. And I did talk to one vet about Vibrio and Lepto. He said, well, you're calving at that time. He says, because normally that's caused by the deer or the coyotes or in the water if you're drinking out of dams and dugouts. And so right now we're pretty much all fresh. We've got pipelines and tanks. But still, he said, by calving at that time of the year, it's going to, said you shouldn't have no issue either. So I mean, when I was growing up, there wasn't those things. There wasn't them shots. There was no pour-on. We had small framed animals and they survived. So I don't know. I think as an industry, it's all production, and we screw everything up. I mean, these cows should wean their own calves like the deer do, but they're too dumb to do that. So it's we just screwed everything up. We do a good job of that.
We want to control everything. That's what I always
Right. That's it. Yeah. You want to be in control.
Yeah. It's hard to let go of some of that control. I know. Well, you were talking about moving calves, and I know I'll never ever forget this day. And it was probably one of the most miserable days that Donnie and I have ever had. Doing anything with cattle. And we were calving late and decided we were going to move these pairs to the next pasture. And I had went ahead and I was calling him late, and he was behind with the horse, bringing him up. And it was a complete shit show. Like, he got him to the gate and turned around. Everything was going back. The calves were all over the place. And finally, both of us, we just said, okay, we need to stop. And so we opened the gate. Most of those cows open. They went into the new pasture. And the next morning we came back, there was about 2 pair that were laying at the gate together. And the rest of them had picked the calves up themselves and had moved them themselves. And I said, right there, we wanted to control, and somebody else said, you're not in control.
Right. And we did.
There were a lot of not very nice words said that day.
Yeah. Well, we got the one pasture, what called the Rice Creek pasture. So that's a mile. We got to trail them down the road. Well, when we started calving in April, so the calves were quite young when we moved them down there. And the same way, you got about halfway down there, and the calves wanted back. And it was And then like one cow come back and she jumped in the neighbor's pasture and it was just a wreck. So what I did afterward, I usually didn't move them down when they're that young, and then I moved them. But then when you did move them, even when they're older, all you did was sit and wait by the gate for 10, 15 minutes. The calves would come to the gate and you would shoo them back to the cows. But it just, you just have to spend a little more time there again. But yeah, but they'll always want to go back to where they came from, especially the baby calves. Even though we moved them down the river bottoms, that one year one had calved, actually we had them out on the pivot then, and then I moved them down the river bottoms. 2 days later, someone said there's a calf out on the pivot. And be darned if that calf had came back home, and then I caught him and on the 4-wheel and took him back down, and the cow, she wanted him, And then another time we moved him home, and I didn't know this one had calved, and she had to go through like 3 4-wire fences and a hot fence. She went back to her calf that night, So it depends on the mother.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Yeah, they know better than we do a lot of times. So, any other questions? Well, we've had really good discussion. Do you have anything else final that you want to say, Ken?
No, I think, like I said, it's probably the best move we ever made was by switching that calving date. I mean, way less stress on yourself, less stress on the animals, and more profit. So I guess I could check it, down to the penny what it actually the differences are, but take me a little while to do it. But I mean, it's like I tell people, just again, we went with a little smaller frame animal, and I think you can get by with a lot less nutrients than and be more profitable that way too.
Yeah. Well, I will just kind of recap a little bit. We will be back on here next Thursday with Dr. Kevin Sedovic talking about some drought strategies and drought planning. I hope by then we've seen some moisture. And then the following week on April 15th, we have Josh and Tara Dukart joining us to talk a little bit about more about holistic management and kind of some of the stressors that people are going through right now, and just hit that a little bit. So I'm kind of looking forward to both of those. And I want to thank everybody for joining us this evening. And again, if you missed parts of this, it was recorded and it will be on the Facebook page, the YouTube channel, and also on the Grazing Land Coalition website. So I want to thank Ken for joining us this evening and sharing his knowledge with us. And we look forward to seeing you guys next week then.
Sorry for the technical difficulties.
It was fine. Everybody hung in there pretty tight. So I would say it's all good.
Well,
Okay.
thank you.
Have a good evening.
And anybody has any questions down the road or whatever, sure can give me a call.
Okay, sounds good. And Kenny's information is on the website if you need that. So have a good evening, everybody.